We talked about the communion being a table for two, you and Jesus having communion fellowship together. Now I want you to think of the communion also as a table for all. It is a banqueting table. It's not just for you and Jesus, but for all the fellow brothers and sisters that are with you here today. It's a communion for all of us. This is not an exclusive table for just two. It's for everyone. Everyone can come and partake from this. Imagine a table, a banqueting table with room for many. Everyone who responds to the invitation is accepted and no one is turned away. There is plenty for everyone. And there is also a certain unity that is established by our partaking together. 1 Corinthians 11:29 says, "For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the Lord's body." Now I know that Paul is mentioning here the Lord's body. He's probably thinking about the symbol, the emblem of bread representing the Lord's body. But also the body of Christ in the New Testament represents the church. There is a double application here. When Paul said that we need to discern the Lord's body lest we bring judgment upon ourselves, he was in all likelihood including the idea of believers recognizing and honoring other believers, other members of the body of Christ, which is the church. 1 Corinthians 11:17, it says, "Now in giving these instructions, I do not praise you, since you come together not for the better, but for the worse." A New International Version says, your meetings do more harm than good. And this is right in the context of the same story of the communion. As Paul described the Corinthians' conduct in their worship, he was very honest about the fact that they were not in unity and they were not walking in love towards each other. He said, your meetings are doing more harm than good. Paul went on to describe a situation in the Corinthian church of strife and division that even affected the way the believers approached the Lord's table, the communion. If you are going to enjoy communion as a table for two, you and Jesus, you must also make sure you are enjoying it as a table for all. A person will never fully enjoy his or her relationship with God and receive all of the blessings of God if that person is harboring ill will, resentment, unforgiveness, a critical nature, a rebellious attitude, and malice towards others. You can't enjoy your relationship with Jesus if you have all these things towards your fellow brothers and sisters. As I'm speaking, the elements of communion are being distributed and you are receiving the bread and the cup. Because that bread represents the body of Christ, you will handle it and treat it respectfully, right? With respect and carefully. What would you say if I took the piece of bread and dropped it on the floor and stepped on it? You wouldn't do that. So now, if you respect an emblem that represents the body of Christ, the Lord's body, how much more you should respect the actual body of Christ, which is the church. The person sitting next to you is the body of Christ. Look next to you. That is the body of Christ. So how much more respectful we should be of our fellow brothers and sisters because they represent the body of Christ. Jesus said in Matthew 25:40, "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." So, some of you might think that I'm very insignificant in this body of Christ. You might be just the little toe. But how much it hurts when somebody steps on your toe? It hurts a lot. No matter how insignificant you are a part of the body of Christ. And all of us have to treat each other with respect. The bottom line is this. You can't honor a piece of bread while dishonoring and mistreating brothers and sisters in the Lord. If you do this, you are certainly not discerning the Lord's body. This is where the Corinthians missed the point. In taking communion, they were claiming to be honoring the Lord's body, but their careless and selfish behavior was actually dishonoring the body of Christ, which is the church. Apostle Paul says in Ephesians 4, verse 1 to 3, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called, with all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit of the bond of peace. And I was reading Ellen White's commentary in the Signs of the Times, January 18, 1883, and she says, the apostle exhorts his brethren to manifest in their lives the power of the truth which he had presented to them. By meekness and gentleness, forbearance and love, they were to exemplify the character of Christ and the blessings of his salvation. As members of the body of Christ, all believers are animated by the same Spirit and the same hope. Divisions in the church dishonor the religion of Christ before the world and give occasion to the enemies of truth to justify their course. And she concludes with this question, and I want you to think about this question. What are we doing to preserve unity in the bonds of peace? What are we doing to preserve unity in the body of Christ? So I'm inviting you today to come to this table, which is a table for two, you and Christ. But I also invite you to come to this table, all in unity. We put everything aside and we join Christ, all of us, all the believers, to honor God. May God bless you.